You may have heard many wildlife photographers advising you to pick a project when you start working on your wildlife photography, and this is a really great idea. But many people assume that that means finding a species straight away that you have access to, that you can photograph. You may assume that means going to a specific location, travelling somewhere, I don't know, photographing orca in Canada, or going over to the Masai Mara to photograph lions. But actually you can find some of the best projects on your local patch. Now, a local patch project doesn't necessarily mean picking an animal or bird to focus on. It could be that actually you start out with your local patch being the project, your local area, and actually taking a lot of photos in similar locations and building up a portfolio of the different wildlife species you can find in your local area. And that's fine. And then that can also provide a basis for picking a species to then focus your time on. One good example of a local patch project would be if you live near Richmond Park or Bushy Park in South London. Obviously the one that springs to mind is the red deer or the fallow deer that are present in these parks. So you know you've got easy access to them, and you also know that you don't need to worry about hiring a hide or anything like that. These animals are perfectly used to people walking through the park. So there's a range of images and situations that you could take advantage of. Or if mammals aren't your thing, perhaps you could pick the corvid species that live in these parks. Or for something a bit different, perhaps you could really focus down onto the relationship between the deer and the corvid species. So there are lots of different options, and you can start out quite big and narrow down your focus. So start with exploring your local patch as a whole, then start to think about the species that are there, and then maybe you can actually narrow it down to even a specific behaviour that you're looking for, or specific relationships between species that you're looking to photograph. One piece of advice I would give is to find wildlife to focus on that maybe other people are overlooking. If you're trying to do something a bit different with your photography, sometimes it's easy to feel like all the images have been done. That's not true. There's always a different angle, and particularly the more you get to know your local wildlife, the more different opportunities for images that you will be able to spot. That said, if you're picking a species that people generally steer away from, the first thing that springs to mind is feral pigeons. You can get some really unusual, interesting images that other people are just really potentially overlooking the opportunities for. So that's something to consider as well. I think there's a real focus on projects being to do with conservation, and that being the theme, and that is absolutely fine if that's what you want to do, and we should all be weaving conservation stories, I think, into our wildlife photography as much as possible, and I try to do that on the posts that I put onto Instagram. But it doesn't have to be about conservation. The theme of your project, your story that you want to tell, doesn't always have to be conservation related. If you can weave elements of it in, that's great. But it may just be to, as I say, open someone's mind to a species that they maybe had overlooked or have a barrier towards. So be flexible with why you're picking your subject. For the ultimate local project inspiration, I would really recommend checking out Matthew Maron. He is a wildlife photographer who has been spending a lot of time recently, well, I think over years now, photographing his local foxes in and around where he lives in North London. If you follow Wildlife Photographer of the Year, you've probably already seen his images, as he has been highly commended in that competition. But definitely go to his website and check out his work, because it really shows what you can achieve if you absorb yourself completely in one species. He's pretty much almost sticking to one location now as well. I think he really focuses on his local allotments where the foxes are. But the images he captures are just so intimate, so amazing, and really something that, you know, I personally aspire to. So I would really recommend going and having a look at his work if you're thinking of starting your own project, to get some inspiration and to get some ideas. My local project I decided to take up was with my local lesser blackback gulls. This was something that I thought about last year when they started to breed and nest on our street. And actually we ended up having an incident with a juvenile gull that fell off the roof and ended up in our street, which caused quite a lot of stress and I guess a bit of entertainment amongst the neighbours. And that got me to thinking how I could use this summer, the summer just gone, to get as many different images as possible of these urban gulls. The point of this project was really to share with people the complexities of gull life. These are long-lived birds. They pair up, they're extremely caring parents, and I get the feeling that many people, when they look at gulls, think of their chips getting stolen and the usual problems that come with humans sharing their space with gulls like herring gulls, like lesser blackback gulls. So I really wanted to hopefully win over a few hearts and minds by giving a bit more of an intimate view of their lives and show the real positive aspects of having these birds right on our doorstep. You know, wildlife has to work so hard to survive, and we really shouldn't be thinking about eradicating species such as this. We should be looking at the methods we can take to live happily together alongside each other. I know that's something that Matt Maron has been really focused on with his foxes, and it's definitely something that has inspired me when it comes to my local gulls. So think about why you are doing your project. It can really help if you have the ideas for images that you want to show in the back of your mind, the behaviour that you want people to see and why you want them to see that behaviour. This can really help when you're pulling your images together. I know that I'm sharing some of the images and videos that I captured with you now, but honestly I had memory cards full of images of these birds in various scenarios. One of the reasons that I'm sitting here talking to you from my dining room in my home is because it's actually through windows that I can see through over there, and in the other room that I've captured a lot of these images. Obviously I've been out and about on the ground, walking the roads locally, but some of the images and video that I've captured have literally been taken through, you know, opening my window and leaning out. So it really does show that you don't actually have to be going very far at all to capture wildlife. You can do it really on your doorstep and literally from your window. When you pick your subject, definitely study it. I thought I knew quite a lot about gulls before I started this project, but actually since starting it I've done some training courses with the British Trust for Ornithology on gull identification and behaviour. I've read up a lot on gull behaviour and learnt a lot, particularly about their breeding season, particularly about why certain species are spending time in urban areas, what advantages that has for them. There's some great research going on to do with gull species and their access to food and things like that. So I would definitely recommend, particularly if it's a subject you've not had much contact with before, as with any wildlife photography, the more you know about your subject, the better you are able to anticipate their behaviour and to also understand what images it is that you are trying to get before you capture those images. In terms of having time for your project, I should say that these videos and images were all captured during lunch breaks. Some of them were captured literally through hanging out my window. Many of them were on my daily hour walk around my area. So you don't again need to be spending huge amounts of time in the field to capture the images you want. It really helps if you have an idea of what it is you're looking to photograph before you head out. For example, when the gulls were nesting on the chimney a few doors down from me, I would know, depending on the light, depending on the conditions, that I would be hoping to maybe photograph the chicks wandering about on top of the chimney or on the roof, or I would maybe be looking to photograph the parents coming to and from the nest. So it really does help, even if you've got a short space of time, just having a think about what it is you're looking to capture, but also staying flexible. And again, just being kind to yourself. If you've only got an hour, you've only got an hour, but that is still better than nothing. And just if it's something local, you can just get out there and hopefully capture some great images in a short space of time. Don't be disheartened if the images that you plan to get aren't the ones that actually you end up getting. As I said before, I've had a plan for a lot of these images, but there were certain things that I also wanted to see that for various reasons didn't happen. I couldn't get the images I wanted of the parents feeding the gull chicks at the nest. And unlike last year, we didn't actually get any fledglings in our road, which was great from a stress point of view, that we didn't have to worry about these sort of fluffy early fledglings tottering about up and down our road with the cats and foxes and cars and everything else. But it did mean that I was slightly disappointed that some of the behaviour that I saw last year and didn't get a chance to photograph, I'd assumed I might be able to photograph this year, and it didn't happen. Obviously, I've collected a selection of images over the summer, but that doesn't mean that next summer I can't revisit this and do the same thing again. And hopefully I've learnt so much that I'll be able to get better images next time. So again, it's great to have a project and focus on it, but if you're only doing it for a few months, again, you can pick that up again in another season, in another year. So don't feel too disheartened if you don't get what you want straight away. As always, the one thing I would say is don't beat yourself up. If you just want to focus on your local area and that's as loose as your project is, and that's great, give it some time, and I'm sure that you will actually narrow it down to a project that you're really comfortable with. But don't push yourself too hard too soon. So start off with exploring and photographing your local patch, then narrow it down to a species you can focus on. Don't forget to consider wildlife that is often overlooked, like pigeons. Have a reason for doing your project, as that will help your focus. Incorporate a conservation story into your project if that works, but don't worry if it doesn't. Study your subject to better understand the behaviour you might be able to photograph. Get inspired by other people working on a local patch project, like Matt Maron. Use the time you have. If that's only an hour every couple of days, that's fine. As always, be kind to yourself, and remember that as an amateur, you're probably working with limited time and resources. So I really hope that this little video has given you some ideas for a project that you could take on, particularly in your local area. If you have any questions or comments, please do get in touch with me. I'd love to hear from you. I think the most important thing for us amateur wildlife photographers, particularly if you don't have a lot of time, is to be really kind to yourself and allow a project to develop locally, even if it means you can only spend, a few hours a week or preferably even sort of less time, but on a daily basis. I hope you can get out there. I hope that you can enjoy the different seasons in your local area and really get to know not only the wildlife that's there, but if you're anything like me and you live in a more urban area, the people as well, because honestly, in doing this local project, I have to say I've got to know an awful lot of the people that live in my area, and they're all really enthusiastic about what I'm doing. So get out there, grab the camera, find that project, and I'd love to know how you get on.